Welcome back to the news. So, it's been a pretty damn busy week for Blizzard overall. I'm going to get stuck in with Warcraft stuff. Okay, watching out for alpha. So, we talked about some back-end alpha stuff last week. And guess what? This time, there's actually even more, with Blizzard now pushing a new alpha build to WoW Dev, which just last week was name changed from Shadowlands Internal Alpha to Dragonflight Internal Alpha. So that's pretty good. Stuff's happening. As for what that means, it could be some company-wide internal alpha testing. Maybe they're getting ready for that. But I think this is vaguely exciting because it shows some forward motion. It shows, in fact, that alpha is probably not that far away. That's got me pretty excited. Speaking of excited, just by the way, a quick bump, if you would like to support our team and all the things we are doing, then over on Patreon we do have some real fresh, delicious loot from the art team, the very same art team that is, of course, working on our game. So you can check that out if you want to support what we're doing. With that said, though, let's go and talk a little bit about Wrath of the Lich King. Blizzard have announced Wrath Classic fresh start servers that are going to go live with the Wrath Classic pre-patch. This is just such good news. All players will start from level 1, and for at least the first 90 days, no one will be able to level boost or transfer from a non-fresh start realm. They're also not held to that 90 days. It's 90 days at minimum. They basically later said that if they don't feel the need to open up those restrictions, they won't. And that's really good because that means that if those servers are just nice and healthy anyway, then they can stay like that. And I think that is more healthy for them. And as for the why here, Blizzard basically said that they've heard people's requests for this, and they also anticipate a lot of new players wanting to do Wrath Classic fresh, and, well, they wouldn't want people to feel behind. And that is a real concern. Even if it's not all that important given the player power resets that a new expansion brings, it is kind of important. I mean, gold inflation, there's that. On all these new servers, gold will be starting off from scratch. That's pretty key. People won't be entering Wrath with masses of wealth in these servers. And that's important in a world where rampant botting and RMT have ravaged TBC Classic's economy. The slate is clean. I think that means that there's now an opportunity where if Blizzard can really tackle hard the problems that have plagued TBC, like with the botting, then we could be just onto something brilliant for Wrath Classic. Now, they closed by outlining some future plans. So, PvE to PvP server restrictions are going to be removed, then the Classic Era clone service is going to shut down, existing realms are going to be consolidated, which we talked about last week, then fresh start realms and pre-patch will happen, and then, of course, Wrath Classic itself will come out. By the way, just a little more on the server consolidation from last week. So I've since taken a look at Ironforge Pro. Now that collates Warcraft log data, right? Parse data, to give you an estimate of raiding populations. And all you have to do is scroll down it. Most servers are extremely dead, right? I mean, even Shazrath, the server that I made a character on a very long time ago, just dead. Now there's obviously still players in those servers, but barely anyone is actually raiding, which kind of shows that the endgame population isn't there. Now, this is where consolidation makes a lot of sense, because in Classic, people will generally be wanting to move to the good servers, and that means that the community will just gravitate in a certain direction, leaving a bunch of servers dead. So the consolidation makes extreme sense. You chop down the server count, you then make room for the fresh start servers, which are going to ideally fill up with a bunch of new people. So pretty damn good. I think Wrath Classic is being set up for success, and a lot of people are going to want to try this that didn't do Classic or TBC. Let's be real, Wrath is a little bit faster paced, it's a little bit closer to the modern game. It still, though, does feel like the end of that sort of vanilla TBC Wrath era, right? Like, things did start to change quite a lot from Kata onwards. So, of all the classics, I just think it's going to do tremendously well, and I'm personally very hyped for it. Okay, next then, a little bit on tanking. This was an interesting one. So Blizzard have actually changed tanking in WoW. Basically, most, if not all, anti-kite mechanics have been removed from Mythic Plus dungeons. So these anti-kite abilities would essentially be tank busters, but if the tank wasn't in range, then they would always hit a nearby player who very often would not be able to survive it because they weren't a tank. Now, this is a mechanic that pretty much existed to counteract a kite-based meta that formed during the Legion expansion. I believe, was it Ataldazar? Like, it's... The community name for this is just like named after a mob in Ataldazar because that's when Blizzard started to do this. But it seems now that Blizz are realizing the downsides here, because if you're a regular player who is killed by one of these, then you feel like you just had a death that's pretty unfair. You've been kind of punished for what the other person did, and it's not really that readable. So it seems like this is a pretty damn big win for the Mythic Plus community. I mean, a sudden, surprising death that you, the individual, cannot clearly outplay, and that is not clearly telegraphed? Like, that's gotta be a frustrating experience. I think it's an example of an overly defensive design, where it's less about things being brilliant for everyone and more about stopping a problem. It's clearly them retiring that. And maybe there's a philosophical change here, because Blizzard are very often accused of being a bit too defensive, you know, less focused on the fun and player experience, a little bit too much focused on solving problems. And even if they solve real problems, well, at what cost? Here, obviously, the cost was perhaps melee players not being as wanted in M+ dungeons, or melee players just having a bad gameplay experience because they just got killed and they didn't really know why, and it turns out the tank did something wrong, and then that just creates friction in the group, and yeah, sucks. So you know what? This is pretty damn welcome. Good one. Next, Blizz are working on a Shadow Priest change, an interesting one that most of us wouldn't have even thought of. So they're changing their default speech to common instead of Shathyar when they're in their, like, void form. As for why, well, this actually ended up being a really big problem for deaf raiders, who obviously cannot rely on voice chat to communicate. So when people are typing comms to each other, or maybe using some macros for callouts, but then it comes out in Shathyar, and of course they probably can't speak Shathyar, I don't think any of us can, that ends up in a pretty rumbly experience. Quite the problem, not one that you really think of. So what they're going to do is make the Shathyar thing opt-in via glyph. Now, to be honest, I think you could probably keep the flavor by just having Shathyar as default, and then maybe just giving the glyph to people who want to opt in to speak in common, but look, the main point is, either way, this is a good little lesson for all of us, and I think a really nice move for the deaf raiders, so great stuff for them. Okay, right, there's been such a torrent of Blizzard news, let's go. We finally got an update for Warcraft 3 Reforged, after waiting over a year since the last one. This revolutionary update basically just adds stuff that the community have been asking for, stuff that really should have been there at launch, things that were in fact part of original Warcraft 3, such as ranked play, player profiles, and leaderboards. And the funny thing there is Blizzard's official version of things like ranked play aren't actually as good as Warcraft 3 Champions, which is the community solution that, by the way, is just so impressive. It's really cool. But it's good to see Blizzard actually now putting in the work, and from what I've heard, Blizzard have built their version of things in such a way that it won't hinder the community solution of Warcraft 3 Champions, so that's actually a really nice touch from Blizzard. They're not shutting down the community thing. And more importantly, I think it's Blizzard realizing how much they've messed up, because they said that rather than just telling us what their plans are, that they would rather show us, and that there's going to be updates throughout the year. Now, you only say that when you basically know that people's faith in you is pretty damn low, anything you say is going to be ruthlessly cross-examined, and where expectation setting can be risky. So apparently they've got multiple updates over this year, and they're just going to ship them, and that's when we'll know. That's good. That's good. You know, a little bit like No Man's Sky, where you just log into Twitter one day and you'd see, oh, a new expansion has dropped. It had no, not a word of it, and then just suddenly it's here. And that really worked well for that game. Now, the odd thing is who's making this, because the classic games team at Blizzard sadly got shut down. Now, Bloomberg last year actually suggested that perhaps an outsourced team is now on that project. I guess apparently for like 10 months, but the odd thing is that if you put the pieces together, the contents of this update, they were actually being worked on a very long time ago, seemingly by the original team. So it looks like this is mostly them shipping work that's actually been done a while ago and is just being polished up for ship. Now, Matt and I go into a lot more detail on this over on our news channel. Essentially, I think they probably have this new team working these future updates, and they just wanted to know, like, when is our plan locked in? When is the time right? Okay, now we just need to show up and deliver. Look, I've always said that if Blizzard wants to mend their reputation insofar as their product goes, actually fixing Reforged and doing right by that community is essential. We can't really forgive the suits who put the whole thing in this position, but we can be happy that now that maybe some leadership has changed, some things are happening, that the attention is actually being paid to this. So it's nice to see the work done. We just need to see how far they're going to go. I will flag up that War 3's 20th anniversary is quite soon, so perhaps they're planning something for that. Next then, during the Xbox Games Showcase event, Blizz announced that Diablo 4 will be releasing sometime in 2023 on both console gens, Switch, and of course PC, with cross-play and cross-progression, including great things like, say, couch co-op, which is, by the way, a really big win from the Diablo 3 console edition that, like, honestly plays so well. Necromancer was announced as our 5th class, now complementing the Barbarian, Druid, Rogue, and Sorceress, which I think means we can expect a sword and board fantasy-style class for the first expansion to D4. As for features then, I'm just going to give you a TLDR. Remember, this is a game in a sort of a really big open world, so within all of this, there's almost 150 dungeons across the campaign and the end game. There are world bosses then for larger groups of players, which seems pretty fun. We've got the Fields of Hatred, large PvPvE zones, so that seems neat. Strongholds then. These are basically once friendly places scattered across the world full of demons, and as you progress through the open world, you clear the strongholds, you liberate them, and then you essentially unlock them as like a little friendly outpost. I think they just want the feel that as you progress through this world, it actually changes a bit. They then talked about the Tree of Whispers, which basically just gives you contracts to further unlock world objectives and bounties. It overall seems like the sort of game where, maybe in an almost Guild Wars 2-like way, they just want you to see, like, events and things popping up across the map. That kind of means, like, even if you just plan to walk from A to B, you'll wander into a whole bunch of things to do on the way, and I think that's a pretty strong way to make a game like this. Now for the end game, they talked about nightmare dungeons that essentially have affixes that you can insert. I guess a bit of Halo Skulls mixed with Mythic Plus, which, you know, and plus, I know some of you may roll your eyes at that. I would say that an ARPG like Diablo is where a system like that actually fits way better. Then Paragon boards. These are your beyond max level progression, and it just is basically loads of optional paths to go down to build out your character. It looks kind of neat. Maybe a little bit more PoE flavor, I guess, because, man, PoE, that's a complex game. But what about legendary gems and other spooky Diablo Immortal things, you may say? Yes, we're all thinking that, and the Diablo team actually took to Twitter to basically respond to the growing monetization concerns. So both Adam Fletcher, the community lead, and Rod Ferguson, the senior vice president and general manager, so pretty big role, stated that this is a full-price game built strictly for PC and console audiences, with plenty of post-launch content planned, anchored around paid expansions and kind of like the optional, cosmetic purchases. And while this would certainly imply, further monetization methods in the game, such as, say, pay for convenience, like buying a bunch of stash tabs like you may do in PoE, or pay to win like Immortal, it wasn't strictly ruled out, which I think has left some fans deeply concerned. Now, I do think that the connotation of what they said is absolutely no paying for power. But honestly, like, even something like buying stash space or any of those convenience things, I mean, those happen in PoE because it's free. So, Immortal 4 cannot have that. Now, the thing here is, if they directly said, hey everyone, don't worry, it's not pay to win in any way. If the GM and SVP of Diablo says that, then that's obviously a general admission that, yes, we know Immortal is pay to win. We made it that way. Now, we all know that's true, but it would also look kind of bad, so they're sort of backed into a weird PR corner, I think. I mean, Immortal, man, it's put the D4 team in such a hard place. Because I'll level with you. I thought the Diablo 4 reveal was awesome. I think the combat looks super fun. I love how impactful it is. I love how the world looks. It truly looks like an evolution. I love the tone. It's dark as all hell. I love it. This, in any other world, would be a massive win. We'd all be saying, wow, it's a pity about those D3 things, but look at this. 4 really looks great. But Immortal has just left a bad taste in people's mouths. That's it, man. let this be a lesson to companies like Blizzard that your reputation is everything. And I think for them, they probably knew all this would happen, but ultimately they are counting on the monthly users and the revenue from Immortal to be worth more than the consumer goodwill, because it's Diablo 4. They will say to themselves, of course people will come back. Whether they will or not remains to be seen. But of course, I think we all remember looking at that screenshot, all the people who would boycott Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 because it did not have a custom server browser. And it was a Steam group for people who were joining the boycott. And on launch day, you could just see all of their profiles logged in, playing Modern Warfare 2, violating their boycott. So I think Blizzard are probably leaning pretty damn hard on that. And as for the business model, look, paid expansions, awesome, I want that. Cosmetics? I expect to be able to earn all the cosmetics in the game I'm paying full price for? Hello? Anything less than that undermines the non-numerical aspects of character progression, which are major to many people. Now, there's one way they can get out of this. If Diablo 4 is a more live game that has PoE-style seasonal updates that contain lots of content and genuine high amounts of effort, then I will accept cosmetic microtransactions. But only if they are fairly priced, and only if there are no loot box-like mechanics. If you want to dangle cosmetics in front of me in your full-price game, thus cheapening the experience, then I damn well be getting something in return for that. And then, of course, add to all this the live service gaming experienced in-game store product manager job role that they posted, and suffice to say, a lot of people aren't feeling great, because be it Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed or Blizzard with Diablo 4, one thing is becoming clear in this industry, it is that box sales only, but that is yesterday's game. That ain't a good thing for you and me. Next, Overwatch 2. Quite a lot of it, actually. So, Overwatch 2 PvP is free to play, and it comes out October 4th. The beta starts soon, loot boxes are dead, instead they are doing battle passes and a seasonal model, and right out the gate, they are doing 3 new heroes, 6 maps, 30 skins with a customizable mythic skin. The next season then drops 9 weeks after that, brings a new tank hero, a new map, 30 skins, new battle pass, and another mythic skin. And if you're wondering about the PvE, well, that's actually no longer a boxed product. That's actually included in the free-to-play service, and that will kick off 2023. It's kind of interesting. I think they're doing their best here, and I think for the core Overwatch fans who have been starved of content for ages, this is absolutely a good thing. Like, to support delivering all of this content, they've actually tripled the size of the team. I'll say for me, I loved Overwatch on launch. I think the 5v5 format will be more to my personal taste, at least. So I'm genuinely excited for this game, right? And I think it also helps that apparently the Overwatch team were a bit more insulated from the Blizzard problems. Just apparently the leadership, which isn't just Jeff, it's also other people, they had their heads screwed on apparently, which leaves less of a bitter taste in the mouth. That said, if you want a full breakdown of the whole Overwatch 2 situation and all the detail and all the new things, check out the video that me and Matt posted yesterday from our news channel. Okay, I want to end this by piecing things together. Wrath Classic probably launches Q3 this year. Overwatch 2 launches Q4. Dragonflight probably launches Q1 2023, likely along with the first bit of Overwatch 2 PvE. Then Diablo 4 Q2 2023. Because at the Xbox showcase, they basically said the game shown would be releasing within 12 months. So it's been barren for a long time for Blizz, like with core releases. But man, there is no doubt that the next 12 months are going to be an utter torrent of content. So I guess, pretty nice time for Microsoft to assume control, isn't it? Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Just finally realizing that, they'd always been saying, in terms of game releases, good times are just around the corner. It actually seems we're there now. Now, obviously, look, Diablo Immortal rocked their reputation. Stupid move. Probably a very financially successful one, but evidently, that's just... The Blizzard name doesn't mean what it means anymore, right? Because they're now willing to do a free-to-play mobile game that means all of that. That doesn't mean that everyone at the company likes that game's business model. I am, let's just say, nearly 100% confident that they do not. But look, it is what it is at this stage. I think you just have to see Blizzard as yet another publisher. I think very much they have lost their reputation. I don't think that they should really get that reputation back. I think the realistic reputation for Blizzard is one of individual teams who have a reputation based on the work that they produce. And other than that, you know, we can't be fans of a company, but we can like the games. And there's obviously been other bits of Blizzard news. Activision Blizzard, you know, kind of investigated themselves and found no wrongdoing in terms of executives, you know, not knowing about the bad stuff that was going on. And I think there's a lot of eyes rolling at that for very obvious reasons. So it is one of those odd situations, right? I mean, you look at, I forget the name of the lead of Overwatch, but if you look at the lead team for Overwatch 2 or the lead team for World of Warcraft, they obviously don't like the bad things that went on at the company. They probably aren't the sorts of people who are going to love Immortal or whatever. And I think that just emphasizes that in the same way that, you know, you wouldn't be a fan of Activision, but you might be a fan of, say, I don't know, maybe a Call of Duty game you really enjoyed, or the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game or something. I think that is now the way to, you know, to deal with the Blizzard products, right? They kind of don't get a win by default anymore. But if there are good games coming out and franchises that we enjoy, that will be delivering a reasonable amount of value for the money and a good experience for us as people who play video games, then that is still a good thing. It means that Blizzard have lost their position at the top of the mountain, but teams within that company can still make really good games. And obviously, we do want to keep up some of the pressure on, you know, the institutional changes and ensuring that bad things don't happen, which, you know, is why it's still a thing we cover in the news channel when it happens. And that's why we're not going to forget about that. So there you go. I guess for core game releases, stuff's finally happening. So there. It'll be less barren for the next while, and hopefully next week, the actual World of Warcraft part of the news will be a bit less barren too. Anyway, that's it from me. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and I'll see you with a whole bunch of fresh videos next week.